Welcome to the Properties to Profit podcast. I'm Michael, your host. Excited to share with you my journey from a six-figure job to building a successful real estate business. Each episode will explore various aspects of real estate investing, from wholesaling and flipping to managing rentals. I'll share the lessons and insights I've gained, aiming to help you avoid mistakes and achieve your financial goals. Expect guest experts, valuable tips, and practical advice to guide you on your own real estate journey. Thank you for tuning in. If you find any value in this podcast, please subscribe, share, and follow me on social media. Let's turn properties into profits together. Hey guys, Michael here with Properties to Profit. And today I am so excited to talk to you guys about managing salespeople. I'm having a little bit of trouble with that, and it's all on me. I haven't been accountable to managing my sales rep. And today I'm going to give you some actual tips on things that I know to do. I haven't been doing them, but I'm going to make sure I'm doing it all going forward. And I can't wait to share it all with you. So today, what I want to take you through is from the interview process all the way to the end. Make sure you're holding people accountable and when to get rid of a sales reps, even if they're performing. I know as a business owners, sometimes we struggle with that idea of getting rid of a performing rep. But let me tell you, every time I've gotten rid of a rep, whether they left on their own or we forced them out the door, things always got better every single time. So if you're feeling it inside your gut that you need to get rid of someone, I'm going to give you some tips and pointers on when to get rid of that person. So if you're feeling any of that, make sure you follow along, because it would have saved me a lot of heartache if I would have just made the decision to cut sales reps when I got the first gut feeling that they weren't going to make it. So today, we're going to start with the beginning process. So that is interviewing sales reps. So a lot of times us business owners, especially starting out, I know when I first started, my first 2 or 3 sales reps, I put out a job hiring ad. They called me or I called them. And I was like, you're hired. Just come on in. We'll go through it. Here's what you do. You just make calls and start talking. Let me tell you, none of those people worked out. Not a single one. And I can't say I'm surprised looking back on it. I think in the moment I was like, what the heck? I can do it. You can do it too. Well, I spent so much time reviewing other podcasts and education and reading books and all of those things. And something I learned probably about a year ago at this point was, well, if they were going to spend that much time and effort doing all those things, wouldn't they just start their own business? Or wouldn't they already been a top performer somewhere else? And why the heck would they join you if they already are that person? Well, the answer is they're not. So that was step one, is you got to find out who this person is throughout the interview process. You can't just bring them on, hire anyone because they have a voice. So we now go through a several step process now for a 5 to 10 minute phone interview on the front end, just making sure that they can have a conversation. Second is we're going to send a PI. We want to know what their personality is and make sure that who they are at their core aligns with their role, or at least is close, right? People can fake it through an interview. They can fake it through a resume. We just had a gentleman who had an amazing resume, but let me tell you, we did not follow up with that. And it turns out he's been addicted to drugs and alcohol. He's been in and out of rehab twice. He was collecting unemployment for 9 months before he was employed with us. He was doing all these terrible things, but his resume looked good. If we would have just called off that resume, we would have found these things out much sooner. We didn't. And I want to advise you guys to do those things so you don't have to go through the same mistakes I did. Long story short, a month in, he let us know he wasn't paying his mortgage and he was behind on his bills. And shortly after, he got in an accident. I do believe he was drunk at that point. And I think it was his 35th, 36th day. He showed up drunk and I had to send him home, call him an Uber. And life was just falling apart for the young man. And I felt terrible. And then he had a sponsor, thank goodness, and he called a sponsor with my push, and his sponsor got him back in rehab. And so we didn't have him for 30 plus days. And then we ended up bringing him back just because I felt like it was the right thing to do. But he was just checked out, and he needed a job that was going to pay him a base that covered all of his bills. And we just unfortunately were not able to do that. I think he would have performed a little bit better if he had a higher base. We just weren't in a position that we felt comfortable doing that. So we parted ways, and hopefully he's on to doing good things. But I share that with you is if we would have checked during the interview process, we would have known he didn't have a job for 9+ months and that his resume was a lie. And you're like, how do you do that? They can't really tell anything. You're right. They can't tell you. In the state of Ohio anyway, but these few things. One is, would you rehire them if they were eligible? They say yes or no. Two, they can confirm hire and last date of employment. I don't know if they could say they were fired or not, but they can confirm when they were hired, when their start date was, and when their last day was. If we would confirm those things, we would have known this guy didn't meet a core value. He wasn't being ethical. One of our core values is integrity. And when you're lying about your job history, that's not very integral to me. So we could have cut that guy out very quickly and saved us a lot of headache and time and effort. And that one was really frustrating. So once you get through all of that, the next part is make sure you're bringing them into the office. Now we let them make a call, get them on the phone with the seller and see how they do. We're not expecting them to close the deal. We're just giving them a script and seeing what they can do. And then we want to see how they respond to listening to themselves talk. Are they catching anything that they did wrong? Are they open to our feedback? And then from there, we want to see if they can get on the phone with the seller again and take anything that we taught them or gave them feedback on, and if they can implement it and they just get one step better. What that's going to do is tell us if they're actually coachable. Let us know that they do take instruction well and that they are trying to implement things. Is it going to be perfect? No, and we don't expect perfection. What we don't want is, we had a gentleman, every time I give him feedback, he would just be like, you're wrong, you don't know anything. It's like, okay. We had to let that gentleman go. So we could have found that out in the interview process and saved us a lot of headache. The other thing is, you want to make sure that they can know how to use your CRM and that they can operate a computer. We had a gentleman who did not know how to operate a computer. He typed with one finger and would fall asleep at the computer. We could have figured that out in the interview process. So it's super frustrating going back over these mistakes we've had over the last 12 months. And I don't want you guys to have these things. And then last test is make sure that they're a culture fit. Bring them into the office. Make sure everyone on the team likes them and vibes well with them. If they don't bring them in, because you're going to affect the culture. And when you affect the culture of your company, it's going to have a negative impact all throughout, and you don't want those things. So that's what you got to do before you bring someone on. Make sure they check all those boxes. Build out your process. Ours is about 5 steps. And they got to check every process step of the way. If they don't, we cut them. There's no excuses. Next, kind of what I started with, we got to onboard them, right? You got to have a day or two talking about your company, who you are, what you do, and why you do it. And then you got to have a 7-day process just teaching them sales and have checkpoints throughout the way that you can make sure that they're understanding what you are teaching them. It doesn't matter if they're present. If they don't understand it, what are you doing? And so we've had people who just don't pick things up. And if we would have had a good onboarding processes and tested their knowledge throughout the way, we would have been able to cut them in the onboarding and saved us a lot of heartache. It's easier for our employees to leave when they get let go quickly. If they're here for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months before you cut them and they've never performed, it's really difficult for them to leave. It's really difficult for the team to handle that too. So the faster you can cut people, you can do that by having great onboarding and make sure you're testing their knowledge throughout. And then with that, don't just throw them to the wolves. Make sure that they understand the process. Make sure you're coaching them through calls. Make sure they're listening to your A players do it first, and then let them do it. Let them see what a good example looks like first. And once they have that, you can let them get on the phones. We have, in our system, we can patch in and give them feedback while they're talking to a seller or a buyer if they're a dispo team. And you want to make sure those first couple calls that they're on with those sellers or those buyers, that you're in their ear giving them actionable steps to help them navigate through the conversation, because they just learn all these things. That's not going to go perfect, okay? So you want to make sure you're there to catch it all, okay? Now, once they're onboarded and you get them going, you want to have clear expectations, 30, 60, 90-day goals, and you want to make sure you're updating those every quarter. And with that, ongoing training, right? You can't just get them onboarded in the first 2 to 4 weeks and then expect things to go perfectly for there. If you get lucky and have an A player, that will work for some period of time, but not forever, not without you having to give up ownership, more commissions, or something like that. So you want to make sure you have ongoing training, and that could be listening to their calls, maybe teaching them objections, tonality, all of those things. That's what's going to allow them to perform better. Most people get stagnant And so they will forget things. So you want to make sure you're always coming back to those things so they get better. Think about this. Ray Lewis was arguably one of the best linebackers to play in the NFL. He still showed up to practice every week. Every day he practiced. And he always preached, you practice like you bled. And he would always say practice was a lot harder than the games. So you want to make that the case for your sales reps, that they practice every day. So when they get on the phones with these sellers, there's nothing that throws them off, okay? And then always audit them. Make sure that they know that there's a chance that the boss man, the sales manager, sales lady, whoever it is going to listen to their calls and hold them accountable when they are doing things that they should know how to do. Next, I have found when managing salespeople, you are actually a manager of emotions. I have found most salespeople, including myself, I've had to go through some deep work to really learn to manage my emotions. We're not really good at it. We let so many outside influences influence what we're going to do in our day of work, whether we're going to make those calls, whether we're going to actively listen to the sellers and what they need. You got to stay on top of that. And how you do that is you're checking in with them at least biweekly. We do a mid-month check-in and an end-of-month check-in just to make sure that they're performing. And it's not even about the performance. It's to make sure that they're good internally. Because if they're not good internally, they're never going to perform. And if you can give them some actual tips to help them deal with whatever they're dealing with in life, then it will allow them to perform. It will free them up to be better performers inside your company. So, and then once you figured out that nothing major is going on in their life, then you can dive in to work itself and give them actionable steps, set them up with expectations on what needs to happen between them and the next meeting, and how you're going to assist them and how you can be there, and just reassuring them that you're committed to them and their performance. And a lot of times that is just showing them the opportunity of the money that they can make with and how it aligns with their goals in life. If you're doing those things, it will help you keep the good people and keep the good people always performing and always fitting your culture and your core values. And next I want to talk about is when you have a good performer who isn't meeting your core values, one, you need to meet with that person pretty consistently and have a clear-cut expectations, right? Now, if they're performing and not meeting your core values, you really got to cut that person very quickly. I just had this, and I unfortunately did not cut this person. And a lot of it was things outside of work, right? He was having some experience in drifting away in his relationship and things like that. And a lot of it was his core values just weren't that high. Our core values here at work are integrity, team player. And those two specifically, he was not doing the right thing most of the time. He was not being a team player. And then when we talked about outside of work, are you doing those things? It was a no. Well, no wonder his life was falling apart. He was looking out for himself and no one else. And I've never found anyone who only looks out for themselves to be able to achieve. And what we should have done is sat down and had weekly goals to help him get there and made sure he was doing those things. And if he was, great, we can continue moving on as long as we see improvement. If he wasn't, we should have cut him right then and there. I had those things, but when he didn't hit them, I didn't do anything about it because he was a performer and I wanted to keep him. Well, that ended up hurting me because his performance continued to sink over a 5 to 6 month period. And every month got a little bit worse. He was missing more leads, showing up too late, and just having an attitude overall. And if I would have cut that individual, it would have freed us up to go find someone else who is grateful to be here. He wasn't. And we had our worst month the last month he was here that we've had in over a year, almost the entire existence of the company, actually. And since he's left in 5 days, we got more contracts in that whole month that he was here. So once the bad atmosphere, the cancer leaves, everyone's energy changes and gets better. Do not let someone who is performing stay when they are not a core value fit. Make sure, I wouldn't cut them day one, you notice that, but coach them along. If they're making changes, great. Hopefully you can bring them back. If you're a great leader, great sales manager, you'll be able to do that. I think if I would have stayed on top of him when I first noticed this, I would have got him back in a good place, but I didn't stay on top of him. I was too worried about upsetting him and it got too deep. And then when I had to do something about it, we were too far gone and it was too hard and he ended up walking away. And that's okay. I'm very grateful he chose to walk away. He can go find something that's going to fulfill him and really help him achieve what he wants in life. Next, I really want to talk about the last thing here is in what we do here in wholesaling and our fix and flip business, our acquisitions a lot of times has to text. You need to make sure you're coaching them and getting them to understand how important it is to actually text like a human. How many times do you respond to, hey, I just want to follow up with you, Mr. Johnson or Mr. Smith or whoever the client is? All the time, right? How often do you respond to that? Almost never. So you want to make sure you're teaching your team different word tracks that get the seller to respond to you, engage with you. And that's doing different things. And we'll intentionally spell a word wrong and then type the word right with an asterisk. We'll say things like, hey, I haven't heard from you in a couple of weeks. What's the next step? Hey, is everything okay? A lot of times when someone stops responding to me, it's one of these few things. So it's going to go back to training, but you need to train specifically on text messages and voicemails to make sure that they're always trying to get these sellers back engaged and not just sending regular text messages that everyone else in the industry is sending, because you won't stand out. And if you don't stand out, your business will die. Last but not least, always make sure you have a backfill of people ready to go. So we have someone who is just dedicated to hiring and finding the right people and always getting our name out there. And the reason you want to do this is, one, when someone gets sick or someone gets unhealthy for an extended period of time, you have someone in your we'll call it your lineup that you can go to and bring someone else on, so you're not missing a beat. Or when you have that core value fit that's not checking the box of your core values, you can let them go and not have to worry about your business is going to tank or anything like that. It makes it easier to make good quality business decisions when you're always hiring and you always have someone that can infill. And two, your team will perform better when they know they can be replaced. So many times, salespeople will get comfortable. They'll get seduced by success and thinking that they're irreplaceable. Well, if you're always having a backfield that you can go to replace them when they're not performing, and I want you guys to know that it's truly performing by things that they can control, right? I'm not saying you should cut someone the day something goes wrong, but you'll find that they will do more work when things start to go wrong because they're afraid of replacement or know that you can go find someone. And you can only do that if you're constantly interviewing, hiring people, and onboarding people. So something to think about there. If you guys found any tips in this, please share this with someone else. And then give me a follow on Instagram, realestatemike02, and shoot me a DM if you want to talk more about salespeople. I'm going through this journey to becoming a better sales manager, trying to hire a sales manager as we try to grow our company to $10 million. And I would love to get any feedback and tips that you guys have. I am by no means perfect at this. And those are just some of the things I have learned. I'll probably do another one of these 6 months down the road because I am hoping to have learned more and get better at this. So thank you for listening today. And let me know if there's anything else I can do to provide any value to you guys. Have a great day. Thank you for listening to the Properties for Profit podcast. I hope you found today's episode valuable. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and share it with others who might benefit. Follow me on social media for more updates and tips. Until next time, keep turning properties into profits.